Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Your Vibes Podcast. Everybody's got a vibe and a story to tell. Here's this one. I hope you enjoy. All right, everybody. Here we are back again with another episode of Your Vibes Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate everybody that's been listening so far. For those of you, if this is your first episode to dive in, I've got a fantastic guest here today, a well-known man, principal at Dickson County High School, and coach as well, and just an all-around good guy. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Joey Holley. How are you?
I'm very well, and thank you for your kind comments.
You're very welcome. And we were just chatting before, and pardon me if I, say some things that may be obvious information. I haven't lived in Dickson my whole life, so I'm going to kind of try to dig out of you a little bit of your life and kind of how you got to be, where you are today, and your passion for teaching and leading, and obviously coaching as well too. So if you want to maybe just kind of lead us down your journey a little bit to being the principal and kind of what took you there, and then we can kind of branch off wherever we may see fit.
Okay. Well, I'll backdate it a little bit. When I got out of college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I didn't quite finish and had the opportunity to buy a business that was locally in town. It was a music and video store, and I did that for 4 years. 2 years was awesome, as good as you could possibly expect it, and the last 2 was not so well. That's why I'm no longer in business, but had the opportunity to at least try to be an entrepreneur in town in Dickson. Tom Hayes back then was president of the bank and leader, and he always wanted young people to get involved and to try to do great things in the community, and he was always very supportive of that. So had the opportunity to buy a business and got the opportunity to try it out. It didn't work out, but learned a lot of things about the value of a dollar, if nothing else, and took that opportunity to go back to school afterwards. I was very fortunate at the time to get a job at Primdor locally in town, and was working customer service, and it didn't take me long to realize that's not really what I wanted to do. Obviously, I went to school originally to probably teach, was probably eventually my goal, but got jump-started in 1996. Got an opportunity to teach at Hickman County High School, teaching gifted kids, which is kind of crazy to think about now. But I got to coach with Chuck Daniel at Hickman County, and that's where I started. My degree and my certification to teach was actually in business, but I got an opportunity to start there, and then working on my certification, got business and got certified, and was able to teach and coach at the alma mater at Dickson County High School in 97.
Okay.
So that was actually my first year to start teaching, and probably back then, probably the first 4 or 5 years that I was involved in things, I got into education so that I could coach. I wanted to really coach football, and I coached track also at Dickson County High School. And probably within 5 to 10 years of that, I realized I enjoyed teaching as much as I did coaching. So it doesn't, I think everyone that's young, ambitious, and wants to coach, obviously you got to get into teaching to do that, but you learn so many cool lessons in the classroom as much as you do on the football field or on a track to try to help, mold the minds of young students. So it was a great opportunity to learn to be able to teach and coach at the same time and for them to coexist. So going into that, I probably taught for about 17 years. And then prior to Creekwood being built, I was teaching vocational classes. It was international business, which was an economics equivalent, small business management, personal finance. And those classes were shrinking when Creekwood was started because I didn't have as many students in the building that were taking those classes. So I could tell really quick that I was going to be, not necessarily looking for a job, but I was really going to have to sell the program in order to get students to take the classes. So got my master's at Grand Canyon University on top of my degree at MTSU in administration, just in case the teaching gig didn't work out. And it really wasn't long after that I got the opportunity to be an assistant principal for 6 years. And now I'm on my 6th year as being principal at Dickson County High School. So that, I don't know if that was how much information you was looking for.
That's
but that
perfect.
Was,
and I'd kind of like to get a little more detail on a couple of those things. So when you were at Hickman with the teaching gifted children, what did that entail? That's a really interesting jumping pad, to really kind of start that off. So was it special ed class, or was it uber smart children, or I mean, how did that work?
It was uber smart kids,
Okay.
Smarter than me, probably more than likely. And that wouldn't have taken much back then or now, to be quite honest with you. But it was, they ranged from second grade to junior in high school. There was about 15 of them. And I was responsible for them 2 days a week. And then the other 3 days I would work in special ed, helping other teachers out in whatever way that I could. But 2 days a week was dedicated to having those kids all day long. And, it really sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a great curriculum and a great set of books, or a mindset of someone that had been there, done that to share with you, it would be great. But here I was, a first-year teacher that didn't know squat,
Sure.
and nothing was given to me. Basically, the kids were here. They're yours. And that, nothing badly to say about Hickman County. It was just, I asked for the job, and they expected me to be able to pull it off. So it was very tough. We had a lot of fun. I'm not sure how much they learned, but it was a good start, But the range from second grade to juniors in high school was just such the majority of them were in middle school, but I didn't know what I was doing at all.
Yeah.
And to try to teach them a whole lot of anything. This was really when the internet was kind of just getting started. So there just wasn't a whole lot of resources out there to even search at the time. Now it wouldn't be a bad idea. Even if you didn't have a curriculum, you could find something online to challenge these students. But there just wasn't anything back there then. So
Sure.
it was a challenge, to say the least.
I can imagine. Yeah, and there's there's situations where you gotta. Some of these institutions really don't, like you said, aren't really set up to kind of deal with something like that, and it is what it is, But now that there's material out there, and educational online systems and stuff that are kind of catered towards that knowledge standpoint of sorts, it's really helped a lot of kids out, and hopefully it'll continue to go down that path. So you jumped to Dickson County High School and started coaching football and track. So what position coach were you? Head coach, or?
I coached receivers.
Okay.
On offense. I didn't coach any defense at the time. I tried to play receiver at MTSU, so I had some knowledge of it. I wasn't the best athlete, but I had knowledge of what receivers needed to do. So I got to coach some great talent when I first came here. Joey Walker was 6'5", 200 pounds back then. He was a stud. Nate Dickson. They were, I want to say they were 98 graduates, but to coach them and have just been able to coach so many cool kids. And I would dare not start mentioning all of them, but those were two of my first receivers. And, those two, between Nate Dixon and Joey Walker, it didn't matter if you threw the ball up, they were going to get it. So it was fun, to get to start out at, that year being able to coach those guys. But coaching, my focus was receivers, and then at that same year I was the head track coach also.
Okay. And you were teaching at the same time. What did you start out teaching?
It's funny. One of my classes was note taking that I had to teach, and once again there was no book on note taking, so that was quite a challenge. And it was block schedule back then also, so it was a 90-minute class, and it was note taking. So that was.
So did you just make it all?
Yes, you just yes. It's embarrassing to say, but I mean,
No,
what do you do?
sure.
You teaching, and you got there's some smart kids in your room, and you're trying to teach them. And even then, there just wasn't a whole lot of material out there. The internet was nothing like it is now. You could find all kind of things now, several books on it, and it was a class that probably didn't make but a couple of years, and that was it. But my main class that I loved teaching was international business, because it was an economics equivalent. So a lot of students took that so they didn't have to take economics. And then, to be honest with you, my passion always was the personal finance. As well as I do, and anyone out there that's been around long enough, most of the time, the first thing we do with money is it's a mistake. We've made a huge mistake with money. And, I mentioned owning a business, and, understanding the importance and the value of a dollar, and, how you should treat your money. And I went into that class with a passion of, don't make the same mistakes that I did. If you'll just listen and do these things. I used a lot of Dave Ramsey and a lot of those tips, and talked about peace puppies and all those steps that he talked about. But we would roll that into the curriculum, and you knew that teaching the classes that I taught, sometimes English and math and science has a hard time selling that the students really need this in their lives. Well, personal finance sells itself when you're talking about money, and it was a really easy class to teach. And you knew you had buy-in from them, because when you start telling them how much money they could have by retirement, if you would just do these simple steps, using compound interest and things, you can really see some cool stuff. So it was a very fun class to teach, and you didn't have to have a whole lot of knowledge about that, because it was a lot of communication with the students. They would ask a lot of questions, and they would bring stuff home, and then they would bring it to the classrooms. It was always a cool class to teach. So, matter of fact, back then, if you didn't have to take personal finance to graduate. Now you do. Okay. And I would almost go back to the classroom now, because I just love that class. But now the seniors have to take that before they graduate, so I wouldn't have to worry about not having enough students in my room like I did back then.
So what is that? I'm kind of enthralled in that whole scenario right there, because obviously the financial situation that a lot of people, including our country, kind of put themselves in seems to be maybe because of a disconnect they have with the relation to their personal finance. And I know that, in the kind of the mainstream education system, it's not necessarily, taxes and credit cards and, bills and management. It's not really beaten in to their brain kind of the way it would really need to be in order to, should they not want to go on to college, which is, their own choice. And obviously people are just as successful one way or the other, but to have kind of that core foundation of a finance, of just kind of how life works, for me personally, I'm extremely hands-on. So sitting in that class would have been great for me. But did y'all include any sort of exercises or maybe group projects, as far as here's a business and here's a situation it's in kind of thing? Were they able to kind of go through those steps as well?
Yeah, we would go to different extremes. One of the two main things we did first was budgeting, and they would be basically given a scenario as an individual, two different scenarios of being single, making $36,000 a year. Find you a place to live, find you a car, work on groceries, your utilities, plan all it. They had a plan in front of them, but they had to go search and find that stuff. And based on that amount of money, and they would always look at me at $36,000. I said, do the math and see how much that would be making an hour. And then I think you'll realize, I don't know what you guys think you're going to make, but this is probably what you're going to start out making, unless you're a doctor or something else. And even if you do that, you don't start, making six figures. So we would take that scenario, and most of the times that was easy for them, but it was a hands-on thing. They had to look through newspapers. I'd brought in tons of Sunday papers back then. It was huge, big, thick paper, and they could look at classified ads to find all that information. And then the bomb was dropped on them. Now they're married with two kids, and they had to pay for daycare, and had all things diapers or formula or whatever, and it was very eye-opening to the point where they were frustrated. But we also taught tithing, and no matter what, you've got to do that. And there was a lot of bite back from that. They didn't agree, but they didn't have any idea back then. I want to say it was like $750 for two kids a month for daycare. And they were like, my mama's going to keep them. No, mamas need to be grandmamas. They don't need to be daycare. So we went and, taught those lessons through it. And then, beside the budgets, I used to always, in group projects, they had to come up with a business that no one has ever thought of before, and basically, they had to promote a video. It's like an infomercial about their business. So it was usually a 9-week long project that they got to get in groups and work together and plan this video out. And and there were some really great ideas. with that. But just some challenging things along those two lines, come to mind as the two big things. But the budgeting was always a huge thing because I knew basically for 2 weeks, like I mentioned earlier, we talked all things Dave Ramsey, anything you could talk about, and rolled that in there. And then the businesses was a hoot because they had fun. You could tell they bought into that because they could have fun with it. Now, some weren't real funny, but some were hilarious. And I still have some of those videos, and I'm holding out to show one day when I get these prominent positions, and I'm going to show those videos. But they are hilarious. I mean, some very, one that comes to mind is actually, I guess, a producer in New York right now, to be quite honest with you, and she's done extremely well. She's got her own company, and hers was as funny as anyone's that did that. So it's just funny how.
So that project came to life.
No, not the idea,
okay. But her behind
the things that she did. She's using comedy to help kids that are either dying of cancer or something along those lines, and they did a really cool story on her. I think she made a big time news station, seems like. But anyway, when you see your students, it was no shock. And we've got others that are, I've got one that's on a Geico commercial now.
No way.
So, she's done awesome. But I believe she was on the same team with the same student. So, but anyway, back then there were some projects, there was so much more now going on than there was then. You could take these classes now and do so many things with them, but back then there was not a lot of internet. It's hard to even say that, but it wasn't as strong as it is now, and to come up with more ideas. But it was always fun to see what students would come up with for budgets. I always have one guy says he's going to buy a camper and he's going to live in the camper and he's going to save all this money and have $10 million by the time he was 40. There's always somebody that bucks the system. So you got to tweak your budgeting plan and all. But it was something that, I tell this a lot. And the great thing about being in education is running into students and seeing them later and have somebody sit. I was at O'Charlie's one time, and a former student came up to me and he said, "Hey, I want to show you my car." Like, okay. I was expecting, he's some rich car he's bought. And it seemed like there was a BMW or a Mercedes out in the lot. And I said, "Is it that one?" He said, "No, there's a new truck over here." "No, not that one either." He said, "It's that one." And there was just this beat up, old, huge jalopy looking Cadillac of a car. And he said, "I just want to tell you that I paid cash for that car. Doesn't look great, but it gets me where I need to go. My wife's in college right now. We haven't borrowed a penny for her college. We've saved money. And basically, we've done everything that you told us to do. Wow. So I want to tell you, thank you." It's rare that a student comes up and have that situation, but when I thought back at that guy in class, he never looked like he was ever paying attention, didn't give a rip, and he's soaking it all in. So you just never know, the impact. That's the greatest thing about being involved in education, is because you have the opportunity to make a difference in kids' lives, and that's what it's all about. If anybody's in it for any other reason, it's just not right. It's not the right reason to be in it. So, but anyway,
having that opportunity for sure, especially for such kind of a vulnerable age, that high school age, you're going through puberty, you're getting introduced to girls and guys and going out and driving, and it's a fine line to walk, between, you have the opportunity as a teacher to impress upon them, but they in turn also have the opportunity to kind of listen to you. So how do you, how is that balance taken care of? And you had mentioned that, it was obviously a lot different back then as far as, technology or the way that education was gone about, and obviously the internet and social pressures and everything like that as well too. So kind of and we may branch out a little bit just to kind of get into bring the county in kind of to the discussion, but from a high school standpoint, for as long as that you've been, dedicated and over there, kind of what are some obviously technology and whatever, and like we just mentioned prior, but as far as, I guess, students just in general, the dynamic of, let's just pretend 2020 didn't happen. We may get into that, but as far as kind of that relationship between the student and the teacher, or kind of, I guess, disciplinary measures that obviously weren't existent back then, or what are some things that, as an educator and as a high school, as a leader in the high school, what are some scenarios that maybe have been thrown your way over the past or here recently that I guess you may have never thought you were going to have to deal with? Or
Well, a lot of it's culture related, I guess, for lack of better words. When I went to school, I graduated in '83. I can't think of 8 people maybe that came from a broken home where they didn't have mom and dad, at home with them. And now it's probably well over 50% of all of our students are at a broken home. If I was just taking a stab at it, I don't have data in front of me to prove that, but I would say it's close to 50%. So, when you come from a time where most people had mom and dad, to a point where 50% of them, probably are coming from a broken home. 20% of them are living with grandparents. Grandparents are having to raise the students or the children. And in some cases, probably, 1 to 5% area, they're not living with anyone. They're living with friends because they've got nowhere to go. So, you're talking about the troubles that can come with that, or, just the burden that the kid's going through. And, the thing that we talk about often in teacher meetings and things is that you just really don't know what a student is going through when they're at home. In our day, you didn't think about bringing guns to school. Everybody probably had a gun in their truck because they were going hunting afterwards, and nobody thought a thing about it. Where now the social emotional changes that are going on with the kids that we get now, it's a big difference. So the culture there with just the family, and we could talk about this all day, but I won't go in depth with that. But when you've got mom and dad raising a child, and then you got grandparents over here raising a child, there's going to be a huge difference, no matter what. The kid, whether it was a situation where both parents passed away, or drug and alcohol problems, or whatever the situation, that kid's been through a lot. These kids don't come to our school looking for trouble. Just sometimes trouble finds them because it just seems like they're a magnet for things, or they're hanging around the wrong people because they really don't have anybody really telling them no. So, back in our day, you heard no and might get slapped upside the head.
Sure,
now,
go pick your whipping switch out there, yeah.
And now that day has changed. Going back from then, even when I first started teaching, you didn't run into a lot of situations. You had kids that would do anything. When I played sports here, I would run through that glass window right there for Coach Fuzzle right now, Dennis Fuzzle. Right now, if he said, do it, man, or put my head through that door, I'd try it. And the day of that really is gone. There's very few kids that just appreciate their teachers or coaches so much that they'd go to war for them. And that's a part that's just changed, and it is a culture change. And, the times that we're in now, there's a lot of differences in, things that went on back then that don't go on now. The culture of the school has also changed. This year, for the first time, our Hispanic population is larger than our African-American population.
Oh, wow.
For the first time ever in the school's history. And there's not a problem with that,
Sure.
But you can just see, the diversity that we have now in our building is way different than it was, obviously back in my time. But that, that also brings some interesting opportunities, not necessarily challenges. But, when you talk about discipline, that's definitely changed, In my time, if you did something, you probably got trouble at school and you got in trouble at home. Now people are looking at reasons as to why we're singling them out or picking on them, or, always getting the same kid in trouble all the time. And they very rarely support us they will believe almost anything their child will say, and whether it's the truth or not. And that's hard, when you don't get support from parents. It's difficult. And the last thing that has compacted everything with culture is social media, and it has just put a huge wrench in most everything that we do. Everyone seems to think that they have a better idea or a better answer to a problem than we do, or they would have handled it this way. And it's hard when, the public's out there just, bashing you.
Absolutely.
It's hard to be positive and try to be a leader and doing the things right. But any decision that I make and the team administrators that work with me, we do what's best for kids. And if it's not best for kids, we don't do it. That's what we're looking for at all times. So it's tough. In my 6 years as principal, it seems like something major's happened. Half of them, something major went down, something crazy. And dealing with that when there's social media out there and people that doesn't really know the truth of certain situations, but they just want to chime in on things. So that makes it tough. I literally quit Facebook myself. I used to use it for our school. I never use it personally, but use it for school because I always like to keep the community informed, not just our kids and their parents, but alumni, anybody in the community. If they wanted to know what was going on in our school, they could always look at our Facebook page, and there was always something information-wise. And then secondly, and most importantly, we like to brag on the kids. Mm-hmm. Kid does something cool, we put their picture on there, video, or both, and brag about them and give those kids the opportunity to, to get some attaboys, and a lot of these kids never get that, so it was the opportunity to do that. But last year I went through a situation where I just decided I'm done with that. So I always like to follow a famous quote. I don't know if Morgan Freeman said it, but I found it and his picture was on it, and it basically said, I learned to never take criticism from someone that I wouldn't seek advice from. And that's just good stuff. And
awesome.
I'll remember that. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. So, with that situation, I mean, I got a text just an hour ago from a friend that's got a child at our school, and, it's things like this that makes it fun, and you want to keep going. It's just, listen, I know you've got a lot of hard decisions coming up, with all this COVID mess, with graduation and proms. You just, you're limited to what you can do, and we're making the best out of it and making the most out of every situation. But she's very supportive, and you get one of those every now and then. It'll make it last for 2 weeks. You won't worry about those just crazy decisions, and sometimes it's tough to survive through some of the situations that are going on, but it's still worth it. If I go into work thinking that I hate my job, I'll turn my keys in. So on the flip side, I really enjoy our school, the 125 adults that work up at the school, that work their tail off every day to do everything they can to make their students' experience in high school a great one and a great memory. And we're going to keep on plugging regardless of how culture changes. Cool. Or what people think of what we're doing or how we're doing it. So when you're talking about, when we led into this little serious part of what we're discussing with, culture and discipline, the world's changed. Obviously, there's not anybody that's listening that doesn't agree with that. Went to a time where, I was talking about the respect thing that we would have for former coaches. I think it was about 10 years ago. It was the first time I'd ever heard this in my life. I was talking to a kid that had been sent to my office because he got in trouble, and he leaned over the desk at me and popped his chest out and said, when that teacher respects me, I'll respect them. And I had never heard that, and I knew, boy, the game has changed now, because they, a lot of people that are in that situation, it is a very small percentage, but they have no respect for authority, no respect for adults. So that makes it more challenging, when you're dealing with students that are doing things that they're not supposed to do. And you try to encourage them, you try to, help them and try to lead them in a way to say, listen, man, you may believe that and you may have heard that at home, but I'm telling you, you're going to have a rough road to hoe, if that's your mentality when you're going out in the world to get a job. that's not going to work.
Sure.
You're going to be stuck in some bad situations. So,
and I like your point as far as, I mean, just the I guess the night and day, maybe not night and day, but the different messages, that they're getting from their home, whatever it may be, grandparents, friends, one parent, two, or an aunt or an uncle, versus, what they're getting at school. It's an odd balance, and it seemingly to me, from what I've learned in my 31 years of life, that how somebody acts externally is kind of a reflection of how they feel internally. That's helped me not judge a lot of people and have rash responses to things like that. So I think that's a really important point. I don't really want to get away from it quite yet. So as far as obviously the culture changing and social media having just a massive influence, because those people, some people don't think of it as this in depth, but those influencers and those people that these young and spongy mind kids who are still really, the male brain doesn't necessarily develop fully until 27, so it's just, you've got this malleable mind that is extremely sensitive and vulnerable to information, especially repetitive information and trends and everything like that as well too. And a lot of these social media influencers aren't the best, and so now they've got that aspect of, I've got a broken home, I've got this bajillionaire or this famous person telling me I need to do this, this, and this, and this, and then now I've got my teachers telling me I need to do this. So it's this whirlwind of emotional discord and hysteria almost seemingly that kind of would, they have to take on and process, and then it kind of comes out. So from a schooling standpoint, and you all may or may not be doing this, but are you and the staff taking any steps as far as maybe in an official box or structure of kind of how to go about handling that, and same for the students as well too? Is there anything on maybe mindfulness or I know you really can't teach religion, but prayer or meditation or anything along that realm to maybe get them out of their box, or maybe instead of lashing outward, maybe turning inward and kind of doing some self-exploration? Anything along those lines that you guys are working on?
We've got a good friend that taught at the University School in Nashville. His name was Kevin Bainham, and he was a baseball coach, a dear friend of mine. We played football together, tried to play football at MTSU together. And I was having some discussions with him because of our diversity change and things, and he was asking me some things, and it never really made me think about it until I had discussions with him. But he asked me, did we have a diversity trainer? Did we have someone on staff that was basically responsible for all things diversity? And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. But in the private school world, they had someone that was responsible for basically teaching lessons once a week. They would have an auditorium full of the whole school, and they would have lessons on diversity, how to handle this situation, how to handle that situation. And I was just, kind of getting upset because I'm thinking, the private school world, you can do that. Public, sure. You can't, you don't have the resources to do that. But it did make me, I guess, inquisitive and looking for things. So I had some conversations with him, and he has since passed away, which is just, I still can't believe this day he's gone. But he had given me some information of some people that we could possibly reach for. I had the opportunity, I went to Phoenix 2 or 3 years ago with a group of administrators, and we were learning about something totally different. We had been doing, it's basically a professional learning communities. I won't go in the depth of that, but it's just how to do those within your school to make your school better. But there was a session that was on, it was labeled cultural bias. And I thought, I need to go see this one. So I skipped one of the other sessions, went to this one, and it was probably the greatest 2.5 hours that I've ever heard as far as it concerning cultural bias. And he was an African-American gentleman. His last name was Holley, which was interesting. It was Hollie. But
Okay.
anyway, he was just incredible. And he led it, and I will be able to go into the depth of this, but basically it was, we're all cultural biased in some form or fashion. No matter what. We may think we're not, but there's so many ways. And he gave some examples, and he led by, seemed like his first comment was something about Jerry Springer, and wanted to know how many people watched the Jerry Springer show. And his whole point was that we see things on television or through social media or whatever, and we believe things that we see on television just because it's thrown at us. You know, he said his first things was, give me some adjectives that describe, I think the situation on his screen was a picture of Who's the Daddy, I think. And it was a white female, and the show was called that because they're trying to figure out who the father of a child was. And everybody threw out all these very, downgrading statements because of what they automatically think. And he said, what if you were somebody that really didn't know about white people, let's say, for example, and you see this on television, you just assume, well, all white people must be like that. He used some examples and some situations, and he broke down all things cultural. It was unbelievable, but it compared to what it was like 6 to 8 things that we see visibly every day about everyone's culture. But then underground, what we don't see is what's really feeding all of this. And long story short, it was just so eye-opening because every day I'm thinking, I just said that to that kid, and what was I thinking? I never thought of it that way. So it just gave, like you said, it was basically training on how to handle someone. I'll just use a quick example. I don't want to overcook this, but let's say you got a student that just cannot stop interrupting class. The average teacher would say, shut up. They might not use the word shut up. You need to be quiet, sit down. You raise your hand to answer the question. I'll call on you when I want you to say something. And what we don't know inside, that kid's thinking, okay, I'm never going to answer another question again. You don't think that my point is important. What I learned through this, this training was that, I want to say it was Italian, African American. There was one other culture that in their culture, let's say at the dinner table, everyone's speaking on top of everyone else. There's 6 conversations going on, 5 people at the table, but nobody's waiting for somebody to speak. They're just all talking. That's a cultural thing. That's what they've seen their whole life. So when they're in the classroom, that's no different. They don't want to raise their hand. They just want to speak out. Where the white culture and, I can't remember the 3 other cultures, German, blah, 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 you get to say your point, and everybody's just watching you and listening. Nobody's interrupting. No one's saying a thing. You get your whole point out, and then someone else speaks. That's a cultural thing. And in the classroom, that's such a huge thing to understand that when you get this culture in your classroom, don't kill them by saying don't say anything. They're wanting to get involved, and they're involved in the lesson enough that they want to speak out. You just got to mold that into a way that, you can both work, independently with each other, basically, in a classroom. So it was just little things like that. Clothing. There was probably 10 to 18 different things, but that was one that stood out the most. And for me, also, to get in a mom with a student, and I won't ever say this again, but was talking to a kid that had been in trouble a bunch, and the kid was just running his chops at his mom. Just not cussing, not using profanity, but just being so disrespectful to his mom in my eyes. He's going on. And I looked at his mom and I said, that's our problem. This is what he's doing in the classroom. He's being disrespectful to you. And she looked at me and she said, I don't think he's being disrespectful to me. So in my eyes, it's disrespectful. In a mother's eyes, her kid's running her mouth. My dad would have killed me if I talked to him that way. But that's a culture thing. And whether we like it, whether we agree with it, I mean, it is what it is. And we have learned a lot of things. You know, I taught some sessions, some meetings with the teachers, had them in different sessions kind of go over this stuff. And it was very eye-opening. I think, you know, we didn't even cover enough of it, but we got a good start in it to make people think about some situations that might happen in the classroom. You know, if you yell or raise your voice at a kid, it's over. You know, it doesn't matter what culture they are. You've crossed the line. You're acting just like they are. You know, so there's a time and a place for everything, and that's just one of those things that, you know, you shouldn't do. Back in the day, everybody yelled and screaming. You did whatever they asked too. Coach Fuzzle yelled at me. I go through that window, you know. But that day, you know, has changed. It's unfortunate, but I mean, it is what it is. So, just a cultural thing and how to handle those things. There's still a lot of lessons that we could cover, you know, on that. Last year was a shortened year, and this year's been a crazy year, but I'm hoping to maybe get back to that one day and put some more focus towards that, because it has helped. It's helped me in the office. You know, I don't say the things that I used to say. And I was probably, when I first started coaching, all I ever saw was coaches that yelled and screamed. It took me about 4 or 5 years to realize, you know what? I wouldn't want any grown man to look at my child and yell and scream at him, so I'm not ever going to do it again. And once I had a child of my own, that made me realize, you know what? You're raising your voice for no reason. So I could get in a kid's ear in his helmet and whisper to him, so you're really messing this drill up. You know, not and call him out in front of all the kids. And, you know, you get just as much out of that as you do yelling and screaming. So it's, you know, it's tough when you're involved in all this, but, you know, I never get tired of learning. And,
it's a constant learning curve. I mean, you know, even kids from homes that may be put together, obviously the COVID kind of put a strain on that, but kind of the work-life balance from a family standpoint has really become strained. You know, it just seems like everything's becoming more expensive, or pay's kind of going down, or you know, just life in general, social inflation. It just seems to kind of drive these parents to work a lot and maybe not be home, you know, even if they're there in the first place. And you know, I think that's really special that, you know, you went to that and saw you know, you gained a different perspective, you know, and you were able to bring that back. And I think the old guard, as far as how to deal with children and just people in general, is obviously changing just as society changes within itself. So let's talk, we'll move a little bit from that and dive into some football stuff. So you've been coaching there for a while. What, forgive me, but when, you know, I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but Dickson County High School football, what's that track record look like? Kind of when was kind of the last time they were real hot, and then kind of, you know, what's it look like, you know, since then up to now?
Well, you know, a lot of people remember the time before Creekwood, you know, and in our most dominating days, we were just one school in this county. And when you have 2,300 kids to choose from, you're probably going to have a pretty awesome team in every sport. A lot of people that, you know, are having a tough time with kind of the way football is going right now, they're remembering those times, and they're forgetting, you know, if you take out what has been taken out of our school, if you thought about it a second, I think you'd have a little different perspective. When Creekwood was started, you know, they basically pulled 900 kids out of our school. That's a huge school, 900 kids out of school. They're 4A. Even though they pulled 900 from us, we were still playing at the highest level. So we were at 1,500. So basically for the last 8 years, we have been the smallest school in 6A, or within the bottom three. Last year's cut we were the last school. We were like 10 kids away from being 5A, which is no breeze, but it's a big difference, 6A, 5A, you know, when you think about those scales. But anyway, we're at 1,500. We're at the bottom of the barrel. We're competing against schools that got 2,000, 2,200 kids, 2,300 with some schools. That's a big difference when you're competing with that. So, you know, we went from the day I won't know the year for sure, but we had talent like Trevor Daniel, Jaquan Lewis, DeMonte Daniel. We had all of these kids. We had a tremendous pot of talent, of male talent during this time. I think that particular year that they graduated, I want to say that 19 students got D1 scholarships or D2. We had all these guys, they got all these scholarships. So we went from all of this talent. Back then, I would have loved to, and on top of what I was saying earlier, we was in the Williamson County District, which they're awesome every year. At least 4 out of the 6 teams are incredible, and not just average. They're incredible, and this is who we're competing against. And but we, when we had Trevor and Jaquan and all these stud athletes, Jaquan got a full scholarship to VCU D1 basketball, starting point guard his freshman year. Went on, I think he's still playing overseas today. Obviously, Trevor punted for the Titans this past year. There's a lot of talent. I failed to mention there was a ton of kids that were really good back then. And we went from that to just be quite honest, the male talent level just dropped. Those kids aren't walking the halls now, or in the last 4 to 8 years. So, we went from that, but the females were awesome. We won 2 state championships in softball, went to the state tournament in girls basketball for 3 or 4 straight years, made it to the Final Four one of those years. We had a McDonald's All-American in Lily Carter. We had the Gatorade Player of the Year 2 years in a row, and Brooklyn Lee, who's a stud pitcher, went on to pitch at Belmont. Lily went to Vanderbilt. I think Lily's playing overseas now, but we went from all that talent, guys-wise, on the other end to just like nothing. Now, golf, on the other hand, has been awesome. We just keep spitting them out. All these kids are going to college. It has never stopped, to be honest with you. I mean, every year they've got a stud. This year we had a freshman that is I just went blank. He doesn't go to our school. He's homeschooled.
Okay.
But he participated on our golf team, a freshman. He got second in the state this year. Wow. He shot 12 under par in 2 days. It was like the 7th best score ever shot in the state tournament, and he got second. He was beat out by a kid that was a senior that signed a scholarship at UT Knoxville. And we've got a kid that's playing in Florida right now. Cam Tankersley is another one that's at our school, junior. He's already signed with David Lipscomb. He could have gone anywhere. But our golf talent has always been up there. But football has been, it's just been a challenge. Well, this year we have changed districts. We're no longer in the Williamson County District. We have got some talent at school right now, and I'm really excited about what the future looks to be. Solid.
So what district are y'all in this year?
We are in a combination of metro schools along with Laverne and Smyrna.
Okay.
So
are these teams you all have played prior?
In the past.
Okay.
In the past. Not necessarily last year, but I want to say it's Antioch, Cane Ridge, Overton, McGavick.
Okay.
I believe it's Overton. And then Laverne, Smyrna, and then we'll continue to play Creekwood, Columbia, and I think the other game is Centennial, one of the Williamson County schools. We are playing one of them, but
okay.
But that's the upcoming schedule. So, you go through trends where you got all the talent in the world, and there was just never any big holes when there was 2,300 in one school. You split. We are still a small county. You split that talent, the way it has been, and it has been tough for us. It's no excuse. You want to compete no matter what, and that's always been our mentality. And it's not like they're not trying. They've been playing better talent in the last few years for sure. But I see that turning the corner pretty soon.
What about, I know Dickson's got a fishing team as well too, and I'm good buddies with Tristan McCormick. He's a family friend of ours, and he's obviously going on to do big things, and I see pictures, of other teams. So when did that kind of come about? I guess step back, personal story is that I'm not a very good fisherman. I'm just kind of a likable guy, and I was on the Chattanooga bass fishing competitive team. I was kind of the guy in the boat that had his gear and his couple poles, and everybody else always had a boat. But you tell me where to throw it, I'll throw it out there. I'm just that extra rod in the water kind of thing. I like to have a good time. But, you didn't really see too many high school fishing teams back then, and definitely no real college scholarships. So, what was the kind of the birth of that, if you know much about it, and how was that going?
I don't know as much about it as I would football, but
Yeah.
I'll try to give a little
Sure.
bit of information on it. I don't know how long ago it was, but there was obviously a need. We had a lot, just like bowling. We've got a bowling team now. We didn't have that forever either. But fishing is just something. It was just another opportunity to have a team. And I think since we've started, we probably had 4 or 5 kids get a scholarship of some form or fashion for fishing, which is great because they're getting opportunities based on a sport that we didn't offer. And but Tristan's obviously a stud when it comes to fishing. But we've got in Bethel must be a recruiting hotbed because they've got another one of our students now that's up there with Tristan. But Zach Bowen, I believe, is there for fishing. So it's been an opportunity. This year they, for lack of better words, broke apart from the high school because of COVID. We were having to put restrictions and things on it, not allowing them to do certain things as a school. So they kind of broke off and did their own thing so they could still compete. I'm hoping that, after COVID, all this goes away, that they can come back because it was just really cool to see. At one time I thought the uniforms for the fishing team was the coolest uniform on campus. They really had it. It was awesome looking. Bowling too. They got really creative with their uniforms. So any opportunity that our students have to do something, that you wouldn't normally get to do is something that we always try to push for.
Cool. Good. And I had this down and I skipped over it, so we'll jump back just real quick and then we'll keep going. Got a new football coach, right? Head coach?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about him. Where did he come from and how's that looking?
Greg Burns is his name. He came from Independence High School. He was kind of born and raised in Louisiana, played himself, I want to say at McNeese State, I think, in Louisiana. But long story short, he has been an assistant coach for 10 years at Independence High School. We've been playing Independence for a long time and watch them do the things they're doing. He was a part of a staff that won 2 state championships and a runner-up one year. So, he comes from good stock. The head coach that was there has probably won 3 state championships, maybe 4 in his lifetime. So, he's coming from someone that, has been there and done that. And military background, kind of a really interesting guy. And he seems to, his first year of all things, he comes in, he works one day at our school, and COVID hit. So we shut down the rest of the school year. He literally taught there one day. Oh, wow. And the very next day we were done. So he didn't get the opportunity to do any spring practice. He didn't meet the kids, hardly, much less do anything productive. So they didn't get to do winter workouts together. They didn't get to do spring practice. They didn't get to do any 7-on-7 summer tournaments, passing leagues, any of that stuff. A very sparse fall practice because he would have to do in groups of 10 to 15, and they were spread out over 3 fields.
Wow.
And, it wasn't kind for a new coach to walk into any situation, and I don't believe anyone would have succeeded in that situation, especially, with the teams that we have been playing. But he has got to roll into after the season was over. It was a tough season, but he made some good connections. We've got some more kids involved now. He's been doing something on Twitter, it seems like every day, of highlighting some kid working out and lifting some awesome weight. And the kids seem to be energetic and, are buying in. And, they're going to have spring practice in about a month. So it'll just be exciting for him to have a whole year of doing what you're supposed to do, with football, and let's see how that turns out. So, but he's a really nice guy, and he's teaching personal finance right now, to be honest with you.
Cool.
And probably would prefer to be in the gym, PE classes. Maybe we can work that out soon, but that's what he's currently doing right now.
So are things looking, how are they looking? I think the world's seemingly, there's some states that are starting to open back up, and I know, at least mask mandate stuff, and Montgomery County and, a couple other counties around Middle Tennessee have started to kind of lighten up a little bit, and Davidson, in the next several months seemingly is going to do that way. And Dickson, and I've had this conversation with most of our guests, is how well, not to isolate the schooling system, but how well the county has really handled everything, as far as kind of the precautions that were put into place when nobody really knew what was going on, and then the massive support that the local community fed to these businesses and to these people, and the support systems that were put into place for those kids with the broken homes, and now they're stuck there. Maybe school for them was an escape, and then now they're stuck there. So it was just this whole big jumble. So now how are things looking? I guess obviously we're kind of coming up on summer, but things may kind of blow away. But are we looking at maybe a little bit of normalcy come back? After summer.
We're, I don't know what to expect because, who knows what will happen over the summer. But it's hard to believe that it seems like this year's lasted like 10 years, but we're 9 weeks away from this school year being over with. So we're actually having our first big meetings with seniors next Wednesday to discuss prom and graduation and all that stuff, making sure they're on schedule to graduate and all that. But school for us, to be honest with you, we've got great leadership at our central office, and we never really missed a beat. Where a lot of schools were all virtual. We went to school. We may have only did half, 2 days a week, then the other 2 days, and was off a week. But for the most part, hey, we stuck our nose in there and went after it, and really no hesitation. We had our problems with social distancing in our school. It's an old school building, and there's a lot of small classes, so it's hard to keep people 6 feet apart, and it's almost impossible, to be quite honest with you. So we had always encouraged our students, when you walk in the building, get a mask on. When you're in classrooms that you can be socially distanced, you can take it off. But anytime you're in the hallway, anytime you're in a class that doesn't allow for the 6 feet, keep your mask on. And to be quite honest with you, our kids are troopers. They did an outstanding job with this. I thought we was going to have a whole lot of bite back. I'm not wearing a dumb mask or any of that stuff, and really didn't. The kids the first day, they were putting them on.
Good.
We communicated very well over the summer what it was going to look like, so there was no surprises. We do a lot of videos and send those out and put it on social media for parents to see, and school reach messages so that they know what's going on. But our kids have done really well with it. We had, when you've got, we had 1,600 that were supposed to be at our building this year. Roughly 25% of them went distance learning, so they did it all from home. So by only having 1,200 students up there instead of 1,600, there was a lot more elbow room, so we were able to do some things, but we still have not had an assembly. No, we had a pep rally for homecoming at the football stadium this year. We didn't do it in the gym because you just can't do it. We've had no assemblies or sessions in the auditorium because we can't get but 100 in there socially distanced. So we've had to do a lot of things by, video. And like we was talking about earlier, our Cougar Nation Network has put a lot of videos out there for people to see and understand what's going on. Promoting the magazine drive, we had to do the results online, as a video and not all in the gym like we always used to do it. But for the long run, I think it's, the teachers have been troopers. If we didn't have the crackpot staff that we've got at our school, they do some amazing things that they've made all of this work. It was tough, to do all this with all that going on, the fear of getting COVID yourself. We had to have some staff members that was tested positive, and kids tested positive, and kids that were contact traced. And it was, it was kind of rough at first, but as within a couple of weeks trying to figure out how to do it all, it was not bad at all. And here lately, to be honest with you, when you talk, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We don't have any contact tracing going on at all. Our teachers got their first shot 3 weeks ago. We're getting our second one this Friday. So that's going to be nice to have 2 shots in us and not worry about it as much. So I think just the comfort zone of that is going to kind of put some people at ease. But it has been challenging. It's been stressful. Not many teachers would say any different,
Yeah, and it's, and sometimes challenges like that make a better person out
Absolutely.
of you, and make you more innovative. And, next time you're in a kind of precarious situation, it's kind of not one of there's been there, done that, but hey, I've been there, and this may not be exact, but, I made it through that, and here's how I kind of did it. And, In my mind, it's changed. In my world, it's changed a lot of. I don't know if it's changed the way business operates forever, but it really did for that point in time. But I as far as kind of how I market and my strategies and stuff like that, they've changed a little bit. And same with teaching strategies as well too. I'm sure they've had to come up with whole new ways to teach things. Whether that be online or in person, but they can kind of implement those new strategies throughout because. If you can make something effective on an online video and you get people to participate and actually be there and do the work, it's you could really take that talent that you learn and taught yourself and put that in the classroom in person and just really skyrocket kind of that participation.
Well, the great thing about technology is that it is so advanced now. If we had a kid that was contact traced or if they were positive at home, we had all of our teachers had a Chromebook themselves also. Every kid at our school got a Chromebook. So our teachers, while they were teaching class, instead of having to do 2 separate lessons for those that were home, they would just turn their computer towards them and just taught class. So kids were at home, they weren't missing anything. You just report to your first period class and they're going at it just like you were in there. So they still did assignments. We became a Google district. Now we do everything through Google Meets and Google Documents and Google Classrooms and all this stuff now. So it's just made it seamless. You think of all the paper that we don't use anymore because it's all right there. There's no reason to. We've got more paper now than we've ever had at this time of the year, and it's been a huge difference. But what you're talking about in business is the same way with schools. We have learned a lot of things. I don't think we're going to go backwards on some things or go back the way we used to do it. We realized, hey, this isn't a bad gig here. We always wondered what would we do for kids, that were in school suspension. Well, now cut your computer on. You can watch class while you're sitting in there. Just so many things. There was a time where we had a lot of kids out, but teachers were still, they were turning on their Chromebooks and flipping it over and having conversations. Kids were asking questions while they were sitting in their bedroom at home. And, there's been some things, some discipline issues that come with being at home and a little more free-spirited when you're at home than you would be in the classroom. So, but, that's things that's just natural. That's going to happen no matter what. And, we've had to come up with some suggestions and have some meetings with parents. But, for the most part, kids are resilient. I did talk about a lot of, somewhat negative issues earlier, but, I look at my job and I look at our school like this, and I think it's the best way that most people could say that everything, 99% of my job's awesome. Cool. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I love what I get to do. I love the opportunities. And I think that most people can probably say that about their job if they truly love it. 1%, it's pretty rough. When it gets to 1, it may be up to 2% now for me sometimes, with the things that come up. But, for the most part, it's just I got a great job. Been blessed with a great staff, great administrators we're a great administrative team. And, in a lot of ways we got it made. Yeah. And you can dwell on the negative like we talked about earlier, but, you can also get rid of things like Facebook where you're not worried about what people say about you. Sure. You can believe in that quote that you don't seek advice from people. You don't take advice from people you wouldn't. Yeah. You wouldn't take critics. Yeah. You wouldn't listen to that stuff. Yeah. So I always get it wrong if I don't think about it before I say it. But it's an awesome comment.
It's powerful. Yeah. So kind of on that point, we'll kind of go. I got about 2 more things, and then we can kind of do just a quick overview of where you see Dickson going. But just to kind of, I guess, highlight you or maybe something you spearheaded or, we'll get both ends of the spectrum here as far as, in your role at Dickson County High School, whether that be coaching or teaching, what is one thing you're most proud of that you've done? And then the opposite end, maybe something that maybe you don't necessarily regret, but you did something and may have done it differently and have kind of learned from it. So.
Well, probably something that I regret is for about a 4-year stint, I was the head coach at Dickson Middle School and for football. And totally loved it. Had some friends that kind of joined me just to help out for free and just had a ball. Football was fun, middle school. The kids still are at a very impressionable age. want to learn a lot. You definitely don't hear many running their chops and all that stuff, but it's still for the love of the game. They're not worried about college scholarships or any of that stuff. Just had a ball. To be honest with you, I wish I would have kind of stayed doing that. And it's nothing against, because I got to be an assistant coach from one of my dearest friends, Troy Williams, who was the head coach at the time, and got to be the offensive coordinator on his staff when he became the head coach. And I don't regret that at all, but it was really fun to get to be the head coach at the middle school, and we just had a ball. Yeah. It was fun. It was way less stressful than coaching at the high school, when you're expected to win. And you're expected to win at Dickson Middle because Jackie Bledsoe didn't lose a game for like 100 years when he coached there. But it was just fun. It was way more fun because it was just more relaxing. That's not a big regret because, like I said, I got the opportunity to coach with Troy Williams, who's just one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet, and such a fine Christian man, and he's just good stuff. I could go on and on about Troy, but that would be something I regret. I think one of the coolest things that I've been a part of, other than just being a teacher, the personal finance end is something that I'm very proud of. When I know I had the opportunity to, I may not have taught them much, I may not have thought they were listening, but they heard it. They didn't just go in one ear and out the other. They really paid attention to that stuff. But probably another I think proud thing is we discussed that Cougar Nation Network. We kind of built that up from scratch, basically with roughly about $10,000. Bought 3 high-end video cameras and sound equipment and everything that you need for a small studio. The students bought in and wanted to label the Studio 72 for when the school first started in the year 1972. They called it the Cougar Nation Network. I was kind of worried about CNN, but nobody's called yet, so did that. But we literally started that from scratch, and Kristen England came to us with a huge background in all things media. And those kids have literally taken it by the horns. We've got kids that can be producers at a television show right now. They have learned a lot, and they're juniors, what's so exciting. So they're going to be back next year. But these guys took just a bunch of equipment and started clowning around with it to the point where they were live streaming our prom, our graduation last year, as we discussed earlier. I can't remember the exact numbers. One big video was over 5,000 or 6,000. Another was over 7,000 or 8,000. But where, last year because of COVID, we had to limit each student that only got 4 tickets. So, we're used to having 5,800 to 6,200 people there watching graduation. The stands are never that packed, for anything else other than graduation or now a Creekwood football game, right, or when you advance later in the playoffs. But to see that many people down to, roughly there was about 1,200 people there last year. And when you have people all over the world that would normally come to watch their grandson or granddaughter or aunts, nieces, whatever, graduate, they couldn't come. Mm-hmm. But this group gave them the opportunity to sit at home in front of their television, cut on YouTube, and watch a live stream of our graduation, hear the speeches, see the kids get their diplomas. Our cameramen, we had cameras in strategic locations. Craig Anderson is a local guy in town that does all the video work for the Nashville Predators. And I think he does like the Jumbotron video and all that. So he brought his knowledge of the equipment that we needed to order and train the kids on what to do. And these kids ran with it and ran a live stream graduation just flawless, where people from other countries got to watch our graduation. They've been doing live streaming of football games and basketball games where people that, we've been limited. You can only have 300 people in the gym for a basketball game, roughly 1,000 to 1,200 for football games, where people could actually watch those games from home. And we've used WDKN, their announcers, because kids aren't quite ready to do the announcing. That's a whole different thing. You got to really know what you're doing when you're doing that. So Lucas Panzica of WDKN and Rodney Parker, who normally do our play-by-plays, we're using their voices, but our kids are doing all the other.
Cool.
Kids are creating their own scoreboards. The camera's on, the clock, the scoreboard. They were running it all, switching scenes. When they were doing basketball games this year, it literally looked like ESPN. You had 3 cameras flopping as the play's going on and the stats and everything. The score, not stats. They'll get there, but that's just something that I look back on that I will. It will be cool to see how many kids get involved in something along with that would have never had that opportunity had that not been started. So it was one of those things you get lucky every now and then with an idea, and
absolutely.
I think it's been good
out
stuff.
of the ashes is birthed something new, and I'm sure that it may or may not have happened given, whatever happened to COVID, and but it was able to be utilized, I guess, in a more specific purpose given, you couldn't have people there. So, and now, with the day of social media, people are making millions of dollars on YouTube or, TikTok or Instagram, whatever it may be. And to give those kids the opportunity, because depending on what you're doing, if you're moral about it and you're pushing a good message and you're well intended on your endeavor to do such, you make a good living. This isn't the college 9 to 5 or whatever it may be, and giving those kids that opportunity with a camera and mics and how to run things like that. You all could have birthed a new person out of a high school student who may or may not have been lost on their direction in life. And shout out to Kristen for helping out with that too. She's helped out with some things that I've worked on with Cody and some nonprofit stuff, and has always done a great job. So that's awesome that she's done that.
She's awesome.
Cool. So one more question, kind of just personally about you, and then we'll just do about another 5 minutes on Dickson. So given all that you do, all that you've been through, and kind of the changes, obviously, in management style throughout the high school. For you personally, I know that it's kind of, especially with COVID, sometimes a heavy cross to bear, and I'm sure you've got a lot on your mind, and maybe seek some guidance. So, what are some things for you personally that you do in order to kind of deal with that, with the responsibilities in that weight and the decisions that you've got to make? Are there books that you read or church, or what's kind of not necessarily your release, but how do you kind of find peace with everything going on, and before you move forward with whatever you're doing?
Well, I actually like to write everything on faith. Obviously, that's a big key in my life, and obviously wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't have done anything I've done so far without it. Definitely the relationship piece there has helped me do everything I do. Try to base it. You're in a world where you can't talk about it at school, but you can do the little things that people know. Where you're coming from. So I know that's my anchor. For sure. I was told when I first took the job, pray and pray often. So obviously do every day that keeps you grounded, and, pray for things that help you do your job in a way that, if he was sitting in your seat, that's the way it'd be run. So that's everything, to me. And I can't imagine not having that,
Sure.
The faith for sure. But have been blessed to have also counsel. I attend Walnut Street Church of Christ, and my old principal and one of my dear friends, George Caudill, is an elder there, and he has given me some advice that has been very practical, and it's something that I will always remember, and it's something that I have taught. Actually, when I interview coaches, I use what he told me because it's so important. But he looked at me and after church one day, he said, do you got a minute? And I said, sure. He said, I want to talk to you about something. I'm going to give you 3 things that you'll be successful as being a principal if you'll do these 3 things. So I'm thinking that I can probably remember. My wife grabbed a visitor card out of the pew and she's ready to write. But it's funny, but it stands for OCD, the initials of the 3 things. Organization, communication, delegation. He said, if you can do those 3 things, you can be successful. And, I never dreamed, not one day in my life that I ever dreamed that I'd be a principal at Dickson County High School. That was never on the plate. But, being in any leadership position, you've got to be organized. Really anything you do in life, period. It doesn't matter what your role is. You better be organized. You better be able to communicate, no matter what you do. That C in OCD is so important. With teachers, with all the things that educators fight now, it's not great pay. You're dealing with kids that run their mouths at you, and you got to sit there and take it, or things have changed so much. But having people know what's going on at all times, communicating with the public, letting them know, make sure what's going on. I did a school reach right before I came here, so I think 5,000 phone calls were made through this thing that, they got a message about 3 big things that are coming up. But communication is a huge thing. And it took me, I don't know, I never thought I was that organized, but I've had to be now. I always thought I was a pretty good communicator, but obviously I wasn't where I needed to be. But the delegator was the hard thing, is giving up things that, you had to realize really quick you can't do everything. And I've learned, this is my 6 years being a principal, and I've learned every year that the more I delegate, the more things run smoothly. I can't take on too much. So, I've given out jobs and things to the assistant principals and their troopers. We've got a great staff that I talked about earlier, but they take it and run with it. And but you got to be able to do those 3 things. So when I interview coaches, when I interview teachers, I usually mention the OCD, and they look at me and they smile. But those are 3 powerful things that if you can do that, and it's always easy to remember OCD, but that's a very, very good life lesson that comes with that, being able to do that. So
that's awesome.
That's for sure.
Yeah, some always good to have something to fall back on. It's and when you're interviewing people as well too, those are potentially people you're going to have to delegate stuff to. So making sure that everybody's on the same page as far as what's known and who does what is, it's just as important here, at our office as well too, because we all can do all of it, but neither, none of us individually would be as successful as we are if we didn't really kind of hone in on, what our talents are, and what we enjoy doing, and B, kind of what somebody else may be better at, doing that, and it just makes the whole operation run a lot more smooth. So, cool. So we'll take a step back and a 30,000-foot view here as far as Dickson. You've been here for a long time, your whole life, and seen where it's kind of come from. And I know I've touched on this in some past episodes for those y'all listening, maybe a little repeat, but obviously a lot of changes going on as far as down 46 and downtown specifically as well too. And what are a few things that in the past past 8 or so years, 10 years really has been kind of some of the biggest momentous changes, with Thornton Drive coming in, and the downtown revitalization, and obviously the new Burns School, and all the residential stuff going on in Burns, and we're kind of at this point now where it's, we're really getting some momentum, and there's some things that are happening. So I guess maybe, what are some 1 or 2 good things that have happened in the past 10 years, and then that you see that maybe put Dickson on the map, or really, assisted in that growth, and then, maybe where do you see it going down the road just the next couple of years?
Well, as far as education is concerned, I think a great thing for us specifically at Dickson County High School was Burns Middle School. Forever we've only had just one middle school feeding our school. And regardless of what people may or may think about sports, it can go 100 different ways there. When you've got my last year at Dickson Middle School, I had 138 kids try out for football.
Wow.
And I was told, you're not cutting any of them, which is great. That's fine. Just make sure we got equipment. But you got 138 kids out there on the field. You're only going to play about 22 of them. What are the other ones going to do? So in the past, we've also been not hurt, but it hasn't benefited us by we're just got one quarterback coming to compete for a job, and they know ain't nobody else taking my job. So the work ethic to me has changed. They don't feel like they got to compete as much because they know who's around them. They've been the starting quarterback or the starting running back or whatever. Well, now we got Burns Middle School, and they've been very successful in sports their first year. And now instead of just having one kid that can be the starting pitcher or the starting quarterback or the linebacker or the fisherman or whatever, now you got 2. And I think that we're going to start seeing an impact. We may not see it this coming year, but I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see that, a kid that may go out there with 139 may deal with it for 1 year, but the next year, if they're not playing, they're not ever going to play again. Why am I going to do this? I'm wasting my time. I never get to play it down. Where now you got 2 schools that are playing, and multiple kids are getting to play. And so they're going to be basically more trained by the time they get to us. And then the competitive nature to me is the biggest part. They're not going to get fat and lazy because they look around and they know who they're going to beat out. Well, now you better show up to play the way it used to be when we were here. It used to be 3 junior highs that fed Dickson County High School, and you never knew. You better be ready to play. You might not ever get to play. It was rare that sophomores ever got on the field. Now freshmen are having to start. And that's a huge difference when you got a 14 or 15-year-old competing against an 18-year-old that's fixing to go to college the very next year. And that's where we've been in the last 3 or 4 years for sure. Freshmen, you'd have never dreamed of a freshman playing at all. And usually when they got in there, it was a joke. Now we've had to start freshmen. And some of them are okay, but they're just not at that level.
There's a massive size difference.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that for the education system, I think that middle school is going to help us. And I think it's going to help the county because more kids are going to get involved. And that will be a twist at what I will say next. I personally wish we just had one big high school. I'm very opposite of what others think. And I'm all for whatever anybody wants to do, I'm good with. That part doesn't matter. But how cool would it be to have one school to be able to offer so many more programs? Now we're split. We've got us in Creekwood. And yes, more kids are getting to compete and play and participate, more valedictorians, more, band leaders, more top tuba players, whatever the case may be. But we can only offer so many advanced classes because you got to have X amount to even offer the class. So, I'm thinking that, we have the kids can take 4 years of Spanish, 4 years of French now, where they used to couldn't do that. They're taking an AP level at the end where they can literally be, they're getting college credit for these classes. We have upper level statistics, calculus, environmental science. We have a lot of this stuff, but both schools aren't offering that upper level stuff because we don't have enough kids to participate. Where if we had one big school, it would be cool. I think I think there's a lot of people that miss it just being one high school. You split in talent in a lot of ways. So it's kind of role reversal. I would hate the thought of there being a third high school.
Okay, that's where I was going to go.
Myself, and it's just me personally. It's got nothing to do with anybody's beliefs or anything. I think a third high school would be great in so many ways, but you're splitting it again. How much support can our county support 3 high schools? I mean, how much are they truly supporting 2 now? When your business in Dickson, do you feel like you've got to do Dickson and Charlotte, right, or just Dickson? Charlotte businesses are probably just doing Charlotte business, but Dickson feels like they've got to support both, and I think it puts people in a bind on the support end. And yes, we are growing, but we still don't spend a whole lot on education in the long run. So as compared to other schools,
so that number of total student body is going to be where the basis for how much money you may get for a program. So what's the breaking point on that? I mean, what does it have to be in order to get?
Well, I'm not sure. That would be somebody above my pay grade for sure. But when you start looking at that end, we are competing against schools in the Williamson County District that their city gives them $100,000 for their sports programs. Nobody's giving us anything. We're having a fundraise for everything. Everything. Or some donor comes in and say, hey, man, you need something? Let me help you do this. And we have a great community that does that. But our county is not, it doesn't work that way. We don't have Cool Springs. I get that. We don't have the business network that Williamson County does. But they're giving a school $100,000 where we don't get that. An average teacher can leave here and go to Williamson County and make $8,000 to $10,000 more. That's tough. That's tough to compete with. When I lost a teacher this year, left after Christmas, to a job at Williamson County that he actually made $10,000 more dollars.
Well, it's a tough market.
That's the tough.
Yeah.
So if you get another school, where are you going to get all the teachers? I'm just thinking of that end. I'm not anti a third school.
Right.
I would love it to be one school, and not that I would ever want to be the principal of one big school, but I think it would be cool to go back to reflect back the way it was with one big school and how dominating we were, not in just sports, but in, and school and band and choir and plays. We did a lot of cool things. So it goes both ways, and I won't live this. I don't believe I will be in the profession long enough that another high school will be built. I think it'll take a long time for any of that happens. This is year 24 for me, and in theory I've got 6 more. So I don't think in 6 years a lot of things is going to happen along those lines. But I think that you would agree that Dickson is an incredible place to live. The county is so supportive. When I also think about the support of the one school. Another thing that I would be proud of is that our alumni came together and paid for our LED sign that's out in front.
It's a nice sign too.
Yes. Yeah. And to think that alumni in 2 months raised $64,000, $63,000 to $64,000 in 2 months, that their love of that school is what, they didn't do that just because they hated the school. They had great memories of it. And, when you think of that in the network of people that you have that can do something that would be for one school, I think you could get a lot of stuff done too. But that was definitely another proud moment, the sign, when I think about that. But so many people were that whole experience was so cool that people got involved.
Well, it looks great too. And you've got your announcements up there as well too, and it's well positioned and well done. It's not something that was just kind of stuck up there. Interesting. I never really put the perspective as far as kind of the limitation of classes and opportunities, by separating the schools out. And, with just the 2, it obviously seems pretty stretched. And so, I guess it's really just a matter of overall county population, what's the push. And unfortunately right now, Dickson, I've started a little new Dickson real estate market, short kind of condensed podcast with some local agents and sort of local brokers, and there's bottleneck for availability for housing, and I've talked to Jason Pilkington and a couple other people as well that there's another bottleneck for infrastructure. So Dickson, you're right, is at this point of what do we do, and how do we overcome these hurdles? And then COVID came and slapped everybody in the face, and made everybody kind of take a look at their life and kind of where are we going and what do we need to do, and step back from things.
Well, we'll say this, that regardless of what decisions are made on the school, we are packed in our school. I mean, we can't handle many more. When they decided to build Creekwood, the main thing was overpopulation, and at that point we had, I think it was 1,375 students, 1,385, and we had 1,600 this year. So we need another hallway, something in the future. If they're not going to build another school, but at that same mind, maybe we need a school. It doesn't matter to me.
So your dream would just be like a school mahal, like just a massive complex of sorts. And
maybe it'd be awesome. There's schools in Oklahoma and Texas that are 4,500 kids in one school, and they've got everything. They've got everything you would ever want because they're putting all their money in one school. So to me, it's got advantages. It's got a disadvantage. It's a big school. There's a lot going on there. The opportunities are, you only have one valedictorian. You only got one stud quarterback or starting pitcher or the lead in the play. So there's positives and negatives to both. But when you're talking about bottlenecking, we're jam packed up there. We can't hardly hold many more students. Wow. So that makes it tough too when you're talking about what in the world we're going to do. So it may possibly need to be that they're either going to have to rezone one day and send more students to Creekwood, which I can't stand the thought of either, or build a school or build onto ours. I know Ralph Overton back in the day when he was principal, he just begged them, don't build another school, just build us another wing, save the money, let's stay in one school. And there was a lot of insight with that, and a lot of great thought that goes into that. But it's all good, man. We're going to make the most of it, whatever it is. And like I said, we got a great bunch of educators on the Hill and administrators that do an awesome job every day. And if we have 1,700 or 2,500, it won't matter. We're going to still keep plugging. So cool. It's a great school, and I think that people that graduated from there, if they walk down the halls again still now, they'd still be proud of what goes on. So
it's awesome. Well, good. Yeah, and from everything I hear, people I've talked to about you and things I was reading, and obviously this conversation, you seem like a well-intended stand-up guy, that got no BS kind of attitude, and that well structured, and the OCD is, hits right home. That's a great structure to kind of have in place, especially in the schooling system with so many different roles that have to be played, and boxes that have to be checked and everything like that as well too. So cool. We're almost at an hour and a half. Fantastic. Things.
Well, sorry.
No apologies. That's how they go. And I 90% of the people I do this with say, man, I didn't realize it was that long, and we should do a follow-up kind of thing. And I fully intend on that, as far as kind of picking up where some conversations left off and doing some maybe a little short 10, 15-minute checkbacks on some topics that people may want to know some more about, stuff like that as well too. So
well, I'm blessed with a great wife of 30 years.
That's
Be
awesome.
31 in a little
Good for
over a
you.
month from
Wow.
now. Got a son that has graduated from Harding University and is a theater major, and is hoping when COVID stops that he's going to actually get to do what he really wants to do.
Good.
He's living in Atlanta now, and I've got a sophomore in college at Bethel that's on a college golf scholarship, playing golf down there and doing great things. So I am blessed by faith, but I'm blessed by family too.
Yeah,
And
proud
it's
papa, it sounds like. That's
absolutely.
awesome. Some
I
good
could
kids.
talk a long time about them too. So, but like you said, it sounds like we went over time. So
Well,
hey,
yeah, we'll definitely do it again. And do you got anything else you want to finish off? Anything you want to tell everybody?
no, I appreciate the opportunity
Cool.
for this. Definitely honored to be a part of your podcast. I've never done anything like this before.
Cool.
Definitely not for an hour and a half. So,
Yeah.
but thank you for what you do in the community, and I'm hoping that everybody buys into this and doubles your membership of viewers and soon. But thank you for what you do and what you represent in this community, and definitely love Aunt Cheryl and some of the other family members too. Uncle Randy, dear friends of mine too. So
Good.
you come from good people. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, thanks for joining the journey. This is growing and changing, and I'm flying by the seat of my pants with this thing. I'm just sending emails out here and there, and whoever responds has got an opportunity to jump on. I've got Zach Brooks with Zach Music tomorrow. If all goes well, he's on the list, and we've had to push a couple times, but he'll be coming up. So thank you guys again for listening. Please like and share and comment on this on Facebook, Instagram, at Your Vibes Podcast, and then yourvibespodcast.com is the website where you can find everything. We're also on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So let us know your thoughts. Joey, again, thank you so much for your time, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.